So our assignment was to make some ice cream and ice cream cones and things like that. And so we're going to try to explore how to make things look like they're dripping. So um, in terms of making this look like ice cream, I'm going to use a couple of circles here and just kind of give some. Right now it doesn't look like, it doesn't look like ice cream, but I do something like this and something like this, maybe like this. Okay, and so right now all it looks like is a bunch of circles on top of each other. But when I use my shape builder tool and I use like I can select everything. Let me just do a select. I'm going to choose only these. Use my shape builder tool and I will start to join all these things. Okay, and then same thing here. Grab all these shapes, holding shift, grab my shape builder tool, and basically I am just dragging my mouse over these shapes to join them in. Connect a bunch of shapes that may not be connected. Let me select, move this out of the way, select this whole thing. Okay. So, bring this to the front. Got a couple of scoops of ice cream. Can change the color. Now, if I wanted to kind of create the illusion that this is kind of dripping, what I would do is select any one of these items, and I could do a couple of things. One, I could use the uh, Envelope Distort from Object menu, and I could say make with warp, or make with mesh, and I'll do make with mesh for the first one. So I do make with mesh, click on preview, and I don't necessarily need a lot of rows, so I can take down the rows, but I could use maybe more columns, right? And then maybe I'll do like another row. So this gives me the ability, I'll just do like maybe 7. I can even do 8. So if I do this, I have these individual points that I can use my direct selection tool, and I can say, take this and start to make them look like they're dripping. I can kind of move this around. I can use the curvature, and so you can really start to kind of control how that drip looks. So that's one way, by allowing yourself to really control how this information drips or looks like, if it's on a cone or something like that, and you can kind of control how it interacts with how it interacts with the surface below it by using the the grid. Another way is to kind of freeform it, and you can utilize a tool. Where is that tool? Here. So this tool, these tools basically are called, I don't know if they have a full name for each, like for the set, but this, we have twirl tool, we have the warp tool, pucker, bloat, scallop, crystallize, wrinkle. So this warp tool is interesting because the warp tool, let me get this one out of the way. The warp tool allows us to have like a certain brush size area, and if I double click on that, I can take the width and the height down or bigger. You can control the detail and how it simplifies the like the dots or points in the shape. But I'll just leave it the same for now. I'll push OK, and then as I click and drag, it's basically like allowing it to kind of melt. And I can start to really, huh? Yeah, I know, right? I could really start looking, and now I can just kind of now it's really a dinosaur. So instead of ice cream, I just made a dinosaur or a weird animal. But anyway, this is how you can start to kind of manipulate how things look. You know, it's, maybe if you wanted to do some sort of splatter or something like that, you know, you can do that. Or maybe somebody had a question about fire one time, and just being able to kind of manipulate how the flames would go or something, you know. And if you make a smaller brush size, you can really get like pointy edges and things like that. So if you double click, you can change the width and the height of the size. Like for instance, right now this is at 1.39. If I wanted to do, let's say 0.5 and 0.5, and I push OK, now it's a smaller brush size, and then it manipulates a smaller area. Also, right now you can note that if you know, as you drag, there's almost like a limit to what my brush kind of, it's like a fall off limit that's happening. And so the intensity basically controls how much of it, you know, like what's the fall off that you're dragging. So right now it's at 50%. If I put that all the way up to 100%, what would happen is I could drag a lot longer. You see this? So now I'm really kind of playing with what that looks like. So now I'm really kind of working with maybe fire. All right? And so I can kind of really play around with how I make this look. If I double click and take down the intensity to, let's say 10%, it barely moves. All right, let me get another circle and go here. It's at 10%. You can see how it barely moves. It's just slightly modifying the object. Okay, so that's the intensity of how it's controlled. Detail, simplicity, or simplify, all those things. I can press reset and it'll go back to its defaults. The same thing that goes for the twirl. You have the brush, the height and the width, the angle, intensity. But in this case, if you click and hold, it starts to swirl, and it swirls to the left by default. If I were to, oops, let's see, so it swirls to the left. Detail, twirl rate 40. Now I believe if I put a negative 40, okay, now it's going to swirl to the right. So the negative value swirls to the right, positive value swirls to the left. So I have a mess. Let me grab another shape. The pucker and bloat. So this is pucker. Pucker will take something and go inward. Right? And I'm clicking and just dragging. So it takes it inward. Bloat actually will push it out. So from the outside, if you just kind of push, it's gonna push inward. But if you're coming from the inside, basically it will push outward. Okay. Then this one is scallop. Basically, this kind of pulls the points inward as well. And crystallize just kind of creates this kind of burst. And then the same thing here with wrinkle. Let me just grab another circle and wrinkle. Wrinkle adds more points. A lot of times when I'm trying to do hair, or if I try to do like grass or something like that, I'll use wrinkle just to roughen up the edges of something. And so I have this kind of rough edge here and a smooth shape here. I'll use wrinkle to just kind of roughen those edges. Okay. So this is another way on how to get texture, how to make things melt. You know, imagine, you know, you're doing something where it looks like something is coming full speed or whatever, and use wrinkle, and you know, it looks like there's some movement going on, right? Take a couple of lines and we started out with ice cream, and now we have meteors. Pretty straightforward. You know, these tools are just tools, right? It depends on your creativity, how you use them. But the most important part about this is that you know what they do and how they work, so then you can be creative. But if you don't understand what they do and how they work, then it's hard to be creative with them.